What is up, everybody? I'm No Lux Given here with your afternoon snap, and today we're going to talk about how information can win you games. This is the deck that got me to Infinite last season, and it is all about trying to figure out what your opponent is going to do, so that way you have the most information to act on. Daredevil obviously being a great example of that, because you know exactly what they're going to do on turn 5. Then with some of the other cards, you can figure out exactly what your opponent is going to do on turn 6 as well. I snap on turn 2, mostly because of Rickety Bridge. That's a really good location with this deck. It's great with Spider-Man, and it's good with Dr. Octopus. You can drag all of their cards there, and then blow them all up, which is always a ton of fun. But Dr. Octopus is also a pretty good card in terms of information, because it limits your opponent's potential plays. It's going to show a bunch of cards that are in your opponent's deck that then they can no longer play, and then from there you can kind of infer what the rest of those might be, and then your opponent's just going to have less options for the rest of the game too. I throw the Widow's Bite into Rickety Bridge, hoping to explode that location, so that way it's fully clear for turn 4 when we drop Doc Ock, and then are able to drag my opponent's entire hand there. So my opponent didn't move the Nightcrawler. We're going to be able to drag now their whole hand into Rickety Bridge, which really won't leave them with that many options for the rest of the game, and that's going to be really good in conjunction with both Daredevil and then also Kang, and you'll see exactly how that works in a second. But here we go. Here's the big Doc Ock moment. My opponent actually only has 3 cards in their hand at this point. They've got a Korg, they've got a Green Goblin. We can see they're kind of like a junk style deck trying to fill up our locations, and then their last card is Angela. I also throw a Death to take over the throne room while it was a little bit cheaper with Wave. And then Rickety Bridge is going to explode, and now my opponent only has 1 card in their hand for the turn that they just draw. So we are going to be able to see exactly what that is with Daredevil, and turns out that's Iceman. This is a pretty reasonable play here. They don't have a great card, so they just throw it into the Rickety Bridge to try to lock down that location a little bit. So I'm going to Spider-Man, and I'm going to just clear out the Rickety Bridge. As you can tell, we're winning both of the other locations too, but the cool thing about this game is that we're also going to have 100% perfect information. My opponent's going to draw 1 card next turn off the top of their deck, and they're going to play it, and we will play Kang while they play their card. So we're going to see exactly what their card is, and then we'll rewind the turn, but it's not like my opponent can make a vastly different play. My opponent only has 1 card in their hand, so they're going to wind up playing this exact same card again. Turns out it is Storm, and they really don't, they actually just barely win the flooded location, which is no longer throne room here. And then they're tied in Rickety Bridge. I do think this is a bot, ultimately, which is why my opponent stays in it, but knowing that they just have Storm, they're only going to be able to win in the throne room. I don't know what it would have had to have been for them to actually win it here, but regardless, we have full information and know exactly what my opponent is going to do, and we're able to grab a win. For another great example about how information can win you games, check out yesterday's episode 3 of the Gambit game, We'll All Lose Together. It's a fun one. But let's look at one more Marvel Snap information-based game before we end off here. Another Daredevil game, really good at getting info, and then we also have Doc Ock and Kang as well. I'm not going to play Doc Ock in this one, but just wanted to bring it up that it is kind of a cool information card that a lot of people don't think about. Once you remove the options that they can play, Kang really lets you know exactly what they can still do, which I think is really fun. Turn 3, don't get to play anything. I have Swordmaster from Camp Lehigh, but my opponent's Iceman means that it is too expensive. And then we're going to see my opponent Yondu, which is a cool information card, and it is a card that I've played in Galactus decks in the past. Then my opponent plays a Beast. So kind of an interesting deck that my opponent is rolling with. I'm not exactly sure what they are up to, but we're going to have enough information to know exactly what's going on just shortly. So on turn 4, I'm going to wave. That sets up for a turn 5 Galactus with Daredevil Sight, which is obviously really good, and I play wave into the Savage Land to play around Arrow. That way my opponent can't arrow me back into the Savage Land, and that gives you pretty good odds for your Galactus to go off, and you'll have info about playing around Magneto as well with the Daredevil site. Yondu's going to blow up Electro, that's not too bad for me, and then Carnage is going to eat up both of those cards and give them a pretty big second Carnage out of the cloning vat. So this could be a little bit scary, but I do know that with Daredevil site, we're in a perfectly fine spot here and we're going to be okay. So I snap before my opponent even makes a play. I see that we've got Null and we've got Death plus Galactus. So Death is going to be free, Null is going to be hugely powerful, and that should definitely be enough to get this game done. So we'll see what my opponent does on turn 5, and turns out they're actually not going to do anything at all. I guess they kind of well, it'll make more sense in a moment. My opponent doesn't make any play on turn 5, and I think the reason for this, they probably just knew I was going to play Galactus and didn't really want to give me more Galactus fodder. This is kind of a cheeky play as well. I can play Death before I play the Galactus, and then Death will return to my hand because of cloning vats, and then I will get to make another one here. Now, the awkward thing about this is because my opponent didn't play anything. Yes, I'm blowing up a ton of power, adding all of that power into Null, but now I have priority going into the final turn. So what I need to do is check to see if my opponent has Shang-Chi. So I'm going to do a little Shang-Chi check with Kang, and that is where information really comes in handy with this deck. Let's see, does my opponent have Shang-Chi? What do you guys think my opponent has on this final turn? Place your bets in the comments down below. I'll tell you, you're gonna need Kang's help in this game because there's no way that you are going to predict exactly what my opponent has here. Let's take a look. Let's maybe jump ahead just a little bit. They're figuring it out. They're figuring out what they want to go for. I'm going to reveal Kang. My opponent is going to flip over a Yondu, which blows up my Spider-Man, and then a Death of their own and a Null of their own for 56 power. So I definitely don't want to play around Shang-Chi, and because I have a Galactus for 2 power that's basically the same as Yondu, my opponent and I are just going to tie. But yeah, this was just absolutely crazy. There were other plays that I could have potentially made. I could also get really cheeky and play Dr. Octopus here and hope that Doc Ock grabs my opponent's Carnage or another destruction card, but I'm just going to go for the tie. Let's just play it safe. Death plus Null. I'll give my opponent a pound it there, and we will tie as they blow up my Spider-Man and then reveal that we are tying here for 70 power. Crazy game. Information definitely did something there, but that one was a lot of fun. That's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I'm No Luck Skiven. Peace.